My manager lied about my performance to get me fired. HR believed him. The termination meeting was already scheduled. What they didn't know was that I had every email, every timestamp, and every lie documented. By the end of that meeting, the person who tried to destroy my career was the one being fired instead. I had been working at my company for over 3 years, giving everything I had to meet deadlines, exceed expectations, and build a reputation I could be proud of. I loved my work, my team respected me, and my performance reviews were flawless. Or so I thought. Then, slowly, things started to change. It began with subtle comments in meetings, almost casual, as if testing the waters. Are you sure you double-checked this? I thought this was your responsibility. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe my manager was stressed, I told myself. But then, the emails started. Reports I submitted on time were marked as late. Projects I completed flawlessly were suddenly incomplete or below expectations. Clients who had praised my work were now said to be dissatisfied. Every day, I felt a growing sense of unease, a whisper in the back of my mind telling me something wasn't right. One morning, the call came. "We need to discuss your performance," my manager said, voice cold and official, as if reading from a script. HR would be present. I felt a knot in my stomach, but I didn't panic. Deep down, I knew I had done nothing wrong. And I knew I had the proof to fight back. Little did I know, this meeting would be the turning point. It would expose lies, reveal hidden manipulations, and turn the tables on someone who thought they could ruin my career. This is the story of how the truth won, and how the person who tried to fire me ended up facing the consequences instead. For more than 3 years, I built my life around that job. I was the kind of employee managers say they want but rarely protect. I showed up early, stayed late when needed, and treated every deadline like a personal promise. If a task landed on my desk, it got done, properly, on time, and without excuses. My performance reviews reflected that. Clear praise. Consistent results. No warnings. No issues. My co-workers trusted me. They came to me when they were stuck or overwhelmed. Clients thanked me directly in emails. Some even requested me by name. I wasn't chasing promotions or office politics, I just believed that if I worked hard and stayed professional, everything else would take care of itself. And for a long time, it did. My manager used to compliment my reliability. In meetings, he'd nod when I spoke. He relied on my work, delegated important tasks to me, and rarely questioned my judgment. I thought we had a solid working relationship, not close, not personal, but respectful. Stable. That illusion shattered slowly. At first, it was so subtle I almost missed it. A comment here. A raised eyebrow there. During one meeting, he glanced at my report and said, "Are you sure this was double-checked?" The room went quiet for a second. I was sure. I always was. But the way he said it, casual, almost curious, planted something uncomfortable in the air. I responded professionally, clarified my process, and moved on. No confrontation. No defensiveness. Then it happened again. Another meeting. Another offhand remark. "I thought this part was your responsibility." It wasn't. And he knew that. But again, I corrected it calmly and let it go. That's what professionals do, right? Over the next few weeks, those comments became patterns. Emails I sent with completed work were met with delayed responses, followed by public follow-ups asking why the task wasn't done yet. Feedback that used to be private suddenly happened in front of others. Questions were framed in ways that made it sound like I was behind, unprepared, or careless. Nothing blatant. Nothing HR-worthy. Just enough to quietly change how people saw me. I started replaying conversations in my head after meetings. Wondering if I had missed something. wondering if I had done something wrong without realizing it. That's the dangerous part, when someone undermines you just enough to make you doubt yourself. But the numbers didn't lie. The emails didn't lie. The timelines didn't lie. My work was solid. Yet the narrative around me was shifting. I noticed coworkers hesitating before assigning me tasks, not because they didn't trust me, but because they sensed something was off. I could feel it. The air had changed. The confidence I once walked in with now felt questioned. Still, I didn't panic. I told myself I was overthinking it. That managers have bad weeks. That stress changes people. I kept my head down and focused on delivering. What I didn't realize was that while I was focused on my work, my manager was focused on something else entirely, rewriting the story of who I was as an employee. And once that story starts being written, it doesn't stop on its own. The first Real warning didn't come in a meeting. It came in an email. I remember opening my inbox one morning and seeing a message marked urgent. My manager had copied 2 senior team members and asked why a report hadn't been submitted yet. The problem? I had sent it 3 days earlier. I stared at the screen, confused. Then I checked my sent folder. There it was. Time-stamped. Delivered. Unanswered. I replied calmly, attaching the original email. No apology came back. No acknowledgement. Just silence. That was the moment something clicked. After that, the incident started stacking up fast. Deadlines I met were suddenly described as barely on time. Tasks completed exactly as instructed were now not what was requested. Instructions that had been crystal clear were suddenly misunderstood. And every time, the blame landed on me. What disturbed me most wasn't the criticism, it was how it was being framed. My manager wasn't saying I was bad at my job. He was saying I was unreliable. That word followed me everywhere. In meetings. In emails. Inside comments that felt harmless on the surface but poisonous underneath. We just need to double-check things when it comes to this project. Let's make sure there are no more surprises. No name mentioned. No direct accusation. But everyone knew who it was about. I began noticing patterns that I couldn't unsee. Emails would be delayed, then used against me. Feedback would be rewritten after the fact. Private concerns became public discussions. And my manager always positioned himself as the reasonable one, the calm professional just trying to manage performance. I started questioning myself. Did I miss something? Was I slipping without realizing it? So I did what any rational person would do. I checked the facts. And the facts told a very different story. Every deadline accusation was false. Every late task had proof. Every complaint had an original version that didn't match the retelling. That's when fear set in. Not panic, clarity. This wasn't about improvement. This wasn't about feedback. This was about control. Someone was quietly building a case, and I was being written as the problem. I began paying closer attention in meetings. Watching how my manager spoke about me when he thought I wasn't listening. His language had changed. Careful. Calculated. Document ready. I realized something terrifying. He wasn't reacting anymore. He was preparing. That night, I opened a new folder on my computer. Not for work. For protection. I started saving everything. Every email. Every instruction. Every revision. Every timestamp. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't confront him. I just watched, and recorded. Because when someone starts rewriting reality, the only defense is proof. And I had a feeling. I was going to need it very soon. Once I started documenting things, I couldn't stop seeing it. Every interaction suddenly had a second layer. Every email felt intentional. Every word my manager chose felt deliberate. I stopped assuming good faith. Instead of reacting emotionally, I slowed everything down. When my manager gave verbal instructions, I followed up with an email, just confirming what we discussed. When feedback came without specifics, I asked for clarification, politely, professionally, in writing. I made sure everything lived in black and white. And that's when the contradictions became impossible to ignore. Instructions changed after the fact. Deadlines quietly shifted. Details were added later, details that had never been mentioned before. But now, I had proof. I began organizing my records like a timeline. Day by day. Task by task. Claim versus reality. I didn't exaggerate anything. I didn't interpret. I let the timestamp speak. Late at night, after the office emptied out, I'd sit at my desk scrolling through email chains, lining them up side by side. Original instruction on one screen. Accusation on the other. I walked into the HR meeting room. The usual hum of office noise was gone. Only the cold fluorescent lights, the polished table, and the presence of 3 people, HR, my manager, and me. My manager looked calm, too calm. Confident. Ready to deliver his narrative, his fabricated story of my failures. He opened first. His tone was clipped, professional, rehearsed. We've noticed repeated performance issues. Deadlines have been missed, tasks incomplete, and client complaints have arisen. I listened carefully. Each claim, each accusation, each word, I filed it mentally. Then I spoke. I opened my laptop and projected the first email. Timestamp visible. Sender and recipient intact. Actually, this project was submitted on this date. The client confirmed completion. Here is the original email chain. HR leaned forward. My manager shifted in his chair. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. I went through each point methodically. One by one, I showed. Deadlines that were falsely labeled missed. Tasks marked incomplete that had been completed perfectly. Client emails praising my work that were now being twisted into complaints. Witness statements from colleagues corroborating every claim. With every click, every email, the narrative my manager had crafted fell apart. HR asked him questions, direct, pointed questions. He hesitated. He fumbled. He tried excuses that had no basis in reality. The room grew heavy with silence. Every false accusation exposed. Every manipulated fact laid bare. I didn't shout. I didn't raise my voice. I let the evidence speak. And it spoke louder than any argument he could have made. By the end of the meeting, HR was clear. The person who had tried to destroy me had become the person under scrutiny. My manager's confidence had shattered. His rehearsed narrative was gone. And in its place? Consequences. The meeting ended, but the tension didn't. I walked out of the room calm, collected, almost serene. Inside, however, my manager was shaken. I could see it in his posture, stiff, eyes darting, jaw tight. The confidence he had relied on for months was gone. HR didn't reach a final decision immediately. They needed to review the evidence thoroughly, as they promised. That was fine. I knew my work spoke for itself. The truth didn't need me to beg, it needed to be seen. Over the next few days, whispers began to circulate in the office. Colleagues who had once avoided confrontation now quietly acknowledged the truth. Some expressed relief. Others shook their heads in disbelief at the audacity of my manager's lies. And then came the official communication. HR called my manager in for a separate meeting. I wasn't there, I didn't need to be. The emails, the timestamps, the witness statements, they were present enough. A few days later, the email arrived in my inbox. Following a thorough investigation, it has been determined that misconduct occurred. Effective immediately, manager is no longer with the company. I stared at it for a moment. Relief, vindication, and disbelief all washed over me. The person who had tried to ruin me, who had manipulated timelines, misrepresented emails, and spread lies, was gone. For a second, I allowed myself a smile. Not a triumphant grin. Not a boast. Just the calm satisfaction that comes from knowing the truth prevailed. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. Colleagues approached me over the next week. They thanked me, quietly. They confessed that they had seen the lies too but hadn't known how to intervene. My preparation, my careful documentation, had not only saved me but also revealed the toxicity of someone who thought manipulation could go unnoticed. I returned to my work with renewed focus. I realized that success isn't just about doing your job well. It's also about protecting your integrity. And sometimes, that protection requires patience, diligence, and the courage to let the truth speak for itself. A week had passed since HR delivered the final decision. I sat at my desk one morning, coffee in hand, staring at my organized folders, the emails, the screenshots, the witness statements, all neatly labeled, all perfectly chronological. I didn't feel triumph, I felt clarity. The chaos, the manipulation, the stress of the past weeks had taught me something far more important than just winning against a dishonest manager. I realized that professionalism alone is not enough in a world where deceit can be carefully orchestrated. Excellence in work is critical, yes, but it can't protect you from someone determined to twist reality. Documentation, foresight, and calm persistence are your shields. I thought about how subtle the undermining had been. How small comments, delayed emails, and manipulated deadlines could erode confidence and plant doubt. I realized how easy it is to get caught in a narrative someone else is writing, and how dangerous that can be if you don't notice it early. But I had noticed. And I had acted. That's the lesson I carried with me: trust your instincts, observe carefully, and never underestimate the power of evidence. I also understood something deeper: revenge is not about anger. It's not about getting even. True victory is calm, precise, and justified. It's about letting the truth, properly documented and presented, speak louder than lies ever could. Colleagues who had witnessed the manipulation quietly approached me over the next days. They thanked me, confessed their relief, and admitted that they had been unsure how to respond before I acted. I realized that my preparation didn't just protect me, it also exposed a pattern of behavior that might have harmed others in the future. I felt gratitude for the process, for the discipline I had maintained, and for the reminder that integrity is always worth protecting. In the end, it wasn't just about exposing my manager. It was about reaffirming my own values, my own sense of justice, and my belief that truth, when documented and presented with calm precision, always prevails. I returned to my work with renewed focus and purpose. I was stronger, wiser, more vigilant. And I knew that, in the future, no lie could ever catch me off guard. Months have passed since that day, but the memory of it still lingers, not as anxiety, but as a quiet reminder of what preparation, integrity, and calm persistence can achieve. I often think back to the first subtle comments, the emails rewritten, and the invisible narrative that almost became my reality. It's strange how someone can manipulate perception so carefully, yet fail so completely when confronted with facts. My manager's departure sent a ripple through the office. People talked, but no one questioned the outcome. The truth had spoken, and it was undeniable. I returned to my work with renewed confidence, but also a new sense of responsibility. I realized that success is not just measured by the projects you complete, the praise you receive, or the deadlines you meet. Success is also measured by the integrity you uphold, the vigilance you maintain, and the courage to protect yourself when deception surrounds you. Looking back, I understand now that fear and stress were tools, not obstacles. They forced me to observe more carefully, document more thoroughly, and act more strategically. And when the confrontation came, I was ready. Calm, prepared, and armed with truth. The lesson is simple, yet powerful: never underestimate the power of evidence, patience, and a clear mind. For anyone who has faced manipulation, lies, or injustice at work, know this: you are stronger than you think. If you document, observe, and act with calm precision, the truth can always be your weapon. Sometimes, victory isn't about confrontation. It's about preparing until the moment is right, then letting the facts speak louder than emotion ever could. I learned that the person who tries to destroy you often underestimates one thing: your ability to protect yourself. And in the end, the truth doesn't just survive. It wins. They tried to destroy me with lies. They manipulated deadlines, twisted emails, and rewrote reality. They thought my career could be erased with a few carefully crafted accusations. But they underestimated one thing: the truth. I stayed calm. I documented every detail. I trusted the facts, not the fear. And when the moment came, I let the evidence speak. The person who tried to ruin me was held accountable. The lies crumbled. The truth prevailed. What I learned is simple: integrity is your greatest weapon. Preparation is your shield. And no matter how cunning someone tries to be, the truth always finds a way. So, if you're ever faced with manipulation, deceit, or injustice, stay calm. Observe. Document. Let the facts do the talking. Because in the end, the truth doesn't just survive. It wins.